This episode is brought to you by Team Mojo, skills training and coaching for leaders who care about creating engaged and high-performing teams. We support you with communicating expectations, giving meaningful feedback, delegating, and tracking performance. In short, we facilitate team alignment that creates stronger commitment to your organization's purpose. Go to teammojo.ca for more information. Welcome to Suits and Sneakers, a series featuring sage advice and candid conversations with seasoned leaders from diverse backgrounds and styles. I'm your host, Carrie Tuttle. With my guests, we deep dive into the areas of team engagement, motivation, and effective performance management. Get ready to be inspired and transform your approach to leadership. Please like, subscribe, or follow to be notified when episodes are released. Let's get started. All right. It is my pleasure to speak with Erin Hicks today. Erin has 15 years of comprehensive experience in the financial services industry, especially in the credit union environment. After being with Pure IT for nearly 5 years, she has consistently demonstrated success in leading cross-functional teams, aligning them with client success and strategic initiatives as well. That is part of what she does as SVP of Client Success and Partnerships. Erin excels in many areas of business. Her leadership style fosters a culture of ongoing success while addressing challenges head-on with respect. Erin holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from San Diego State University and an MBA from Point Loma Nazarene University. In her free time, she enjoys exploring new restaurants and considers herself a true foodie. Welcome to Suits and Sneakers, Erin.
Thank you so much. I do love my food. There's no denying that. So.
Who doesn't? Excellent, excellent. Well, maybe you could give us a little bit of background on sort of your movement from early in your career into maybe your most significant or most interesting leadership role.
Sure. Something in reflecting on coming and to kind of discuss and talk with you today, and what I thought might be valuable for the audience to hear and to kind of see, is that you can be a leader without necessarily managing people. And I think sometimes that line gets blurred or it gets crossed. So being younger in my career, I came up kind of through the ranks of the financial services space, as you said, credit union specifically. That was kind of, I was in the retail side, but selfishly, I wanted my at least one weekend day off. And what better than financial services offers you at least Sundays off, right? So I navigated into the credit union space. And what I found very quickly was the movement was very powerful and spoke to me. You know, every credit union is there for a particular reason, to support their members, to support their communities in different ways. And so that spoke to my heart. And from there, my career kind of working hard. I kind of come from the hard work ethic, do what you need to do, get the job done. And that's translated throughout my career. But I was not always leading people, but maybe leading initiatives, leading and driving within the organization, things that needed to happen or change, or be a change agent in an organization. And I think that's where you kind of differentiate yourself as an employee and as maybe a future leader or a current leader, is how you step up and step into those types of conversations and initiatives. So from kind of credit unions to now today, where we are a QSO and we support credit unions at Pure IT, I lead a number of different team members, as well as continuing to drive initiatives and things forward. So I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Carrie.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, and you brought up a really interesting concept, because I think it's almost more challenging to influence people to change and move through a project when you don't have that formal line of reporting relationship. And so I think it's really good to point that out, and that the people listening, that you don't have to be a people leader to necessarily take on leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see, at least in my career trajectory and where I have grown and gone, that leading people obviously has a different type of impact. You have a direct responsibility for your teams and their success, right? But there's also being a leader in an organization and stepping up and saying, not only that you'll take something on maybe, or that maybe it's not the right decision, or being open and very transparent and having a good conversation to learn from other people, being I don't want to say that it comes back to being humble, but you are good at what you do. And there are other complements and components on your team that can help drive you forward and drive an organization forward and drive an initiative forward with many perspectives and kind of coming to the right decision on where you want to move forward. So I think that there's some different components in defining a leader and maybe kind of the leadership and management realm, but maybe I
Mhm.
digress.
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's very relevant. And in credit unions, would you say that that's different than traditional banks as far as how they function, how they make decisions, how you drive initiatives?
I think it can be. Obviously, the larger the institution is, the harder it is to kind of steer and move the ship.
Hmm.
So I think when it comes to credit unions, oftentimes the majority of credit unions anyway, roughly 80% are on the smaller side of institutions, and they kind of meet a need in their community, their state, their region, their whatever it is. And so they can tend to be a bit more nimble. But for the larger institutions, say it's a larger bank, or I had some experience working at a community bank as well. It was regionally run, which actually helped us remain nimble and relevant to our community and who we were trying to have as our customers or who we were trying to serve. So I feel like my personal career trajectory has been more successful because I am a dig in and want to get things done and move things forward. And so I've gravitated towards roles that enable and empower me in that way to still be able to make some changes and have a voice. Being a number in an organization is not where I shine and I thrive. And so I have not been super successful in those roles and I don't stay there very long.
Yeah. Well, and I think, when most of us are in university, I did a marketing degree like you. So when we're in university, our professors tend to encourage us to think about our 5-year plan.
Right.
And often we think that the only path is, moving up within the ranks of a corporation. And it's going to be years before we could take on leadership of a team. And yet, if you can maneuver into a smaller organization, it opens up different paths for your
It
career.
does.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you took on a promotion into leadership, was that an internal move or was that moving to another organization?
So I would say my first kind of maybe management leadership role was a different organization, but I would say from where I was at Pure IT, my trajectory at Pure IT was actually coming in because of my experience on the credit union side and being able to be leading an initiative, a department, growing a group. But I was not responsible as a manager for those individuals, right? I would help as a team, and it was a very collaborative and team effort. And then from there, I was promoted to be a leader of a number of departments. And I think that it's the natural drive and desire to serve people and to make things better and to help the organization grow that has put me in the position that I'm in today. There was a natural alignment with a couple of individuals in our organization when our co-founders and our C-level were interested in exploring new opportunities, that we were able to step up and step into a role and help keep the organization moving forward in the direction that we wanted to go.
Mhm. Yeah, and maybe just for a little context too, what exactly does Pure IT do?
Sure. So we are a strategic consulting company specifically geared towards credit unions. But what we have found is that a lot of credit unions don't just need the support on the roadmap, what they should do, what they can do internally, but also how to accomplish it. So we have three main arms of our business. We have the professional services consulting side, and then we have an engineering team that is our solution services that does implementation of projects, all geared around the technology and the infrastructure of an organization. And then we have a managed services arm that can help them with those kind of, I'll say sometimes they're redundant or repetitive tasks, managing your firewalls, managing your servers, your workstations, things like that, that can help alleviate some of those pressures from smaller organizations or even larger organizations, but to help them focus on what the business needs. What do their members need? What do their customers need? What are they trying to accomplish? And if you're bogged down with a lot of the same day-to-day monotony, you can't necessarily free yourself up to be innovative or take on new projects or do new things. So our business kind of checks a lot of boxes for organizations, but at the same time, sometimes it's just a roadmap. We just need help to figure out where we need to go. We want to be here. How do we get there? And sometimes it's I don't have the staff to keep up with everything that takes to run our organization. Can you help me? And so we can help wherever and complement the organization where it makes sense.
Okay, that's great to know. That's complex too, right? Like those are complex relationships to manage. So for your team, what stands out most as far as your philosophy on how you lead your team?
So I come from a very collaborative. Anybody that's worked with me knows that I like to get things done and I'm fairly direct, but I am very collaborative when it comes to I want to make sure I have all of the information, and I love to tap on people, and I can zero in very quickly from working with my team specifically on the skill sets on who's going to be the one that can get the answer that I need, and how can we solve a challenge, and how can we approach this. And so my mind naturally outside of work is a problem solving mind, right? It just instantly goes to okay, what are we solving for here? What are we trying to accomplish? And then kind of navigating the fastest way to accomplish that. But what I've found personally is that sometimes someone comes just to tell you that they're frustrated or venting, or like this isn't something to solve. And so I was thinking about this again in preparation for our conversation, but I've had to step back and say, do do you just need someone to lean on and listen to right now, or are we trying to solve something? Because my mind, I have to quiet my mind. It will instantly go to that, like, solve this problem. And sometimes it's not something to solve. It's just something to be supportive. So that's one thing that I think from a leadership perspective that I've had to recognize in myself. And then acknowledging the skills and the value that each person on your team provides, I think, to ensure that they feel fulfilled and that they're continuing to grow. A lot of the one-on-ones that I have with my teams are related to their professional development, where they're trying to go, what they can do. And then from my vantage point, where can I support them? If I know that we have an initiative, we have a project coming up, we have something, and they can be tapped on and kind of folded into it, gain additional context, learn what the flow of that is, how they can grow themselves personally and professionally, I want to support that. And so I think for me as a leader, understanding my team, digging in, ensuring they feel supported by me and that I can also lean on them has really been key to the success of the collaboration of the many departments that I'm under, kind of having this holistic direction and vantage point to support the organization as a whole.
I love that. How do you think your approach influences the culture of your team?
So that's interesting, because I think the culture of an organization is so critical. When we come across hard times, when there are difficult decisions as a business to be made, we kind of individually we kind of refer back to, I think, and it's natural to do, it's a human concept, right? What's in this for me? What's my impact? What does this mean to me? And sometimes it's so, for example, we do disaster recovery tests and business continuity planning, and it's because we can document and plan it out, but until you experience it, until something happens, an emergency happens, and Carrie, you're like, okay, I'm the one that's responsible for collaborating, like getting all of these people together, and then your family is at risk because of this emergency, you're like, I don't care about you people. I'm sorry. I have to go take care of my family, right? And so we have to understand who our people are and what the responsibility is that we're asking of them, and are we setting them up for success? And so the more that you can have this open culture and this transparent culture, and make sure that people can feel like they can be honest and very clear with what it is that they need in a safe space, I think that drives your organization forward, because inevitably you're going to bump into things that aren't necessarily a natural disaster, but that impact them in a negative way potentially. And you want to know, how can you support them, and how can you make sure that your business will continue to run while you're also ensuring that your team feels supported. And so I think that there's a lot that goes into culture that I don't know every organization focuses enough on, because I think it's taken for granted a lot of times. There ends up being subcultures that occur within departments, right? We have this holistic organization culture that we want to tout and perform, but then we have these other cultures that kind of can develop And it can be positive, but it should also be something that you ensure that you have alignment and visibility on, so you don't have something happening in your organization that's unsuccessful.
What are some mistakes that you've observed in managing company culture?
I think that that was the learning of the subculture for me, right? And where I have some context related to subcultures being developed is that you want to support teams, or you see leaders in your organization and they support their team, but to a point where maybe their team has been allowed to not work at the same trajectory or level that you, or expectations, and there's a misalignment and accountability. And I think for me, it's recognizing what's within my control, what is the best that I can do for my team, and support what our initiatives are. But sometimes it's out of your control if it doesn't have that, I'll say, top down support and vision for the organization. If that's not all aligned and you're not working in the same direction, then there's going to be friction points that you experience. And so I originally, coming up in my career, thought, oh yes, as an organization, we work in this organization, 150, 200, however many people that work here, and we all know the culture, and we all see our little maybe cue cards or posters on the wall, back when we all worked in an office and not at home. But you had these culture statements, right, to try to drive and keep it reaffirmed in the day to day. But then you realize, if it's not in the actions, if it's not continued in how we interact, if it's not continued in the respect and the manager or leader to other leader, or leader to someone that they don't even work for or with, they're just collaborating, if you don't see it throughout, then it quickly erodes. And
Mhm.
so I try to always be mindful of what the desired culture should be, as well as how I can continue to reaffirm it or support the elements of the culture that I think are the most valuable, or that maybe are missing, or gaps that are existing in the organization today.
If another subculture emerges that isn't necessarily within our direct control, what are our options? What's in our toolkit
That's
that we can help influence or change that?
that's a good question. I think there's likely direct conversation. If it's apparent that it's in a certain area or a certain department and it's causing friction, then I think it's important to be direct and to be honest and say, hey, I think something's happening here and I want to be in front of it. But what you have to have is that kind of overarching culture that allows for open communication and acceptance and
Mhm.
openness that there's challenges, and not someone that maybe shuts it down or is defensive and is like, hey, my team likes to take Fridays off, or we like to party, and I don't know what the culture could be. There's a lot of different things, right? Or we don't
Yeah.
we don't help people. We're I'm a curmudgeon. I don't know. There could be different things that impact an organization different ways. But it's a really good question, because I don't know. I don't have the answer of a one-way fix for a cultural challenge that you find a kind of a wave is being created, and as it grows, it's going to be harder and harder to stop, right? So that's where some of my leadership style is to be more direct. If I see something that is perceived to be a friction point that's only going to get worse with time, I'll try to address something right away. I'll try to work towards a solution. I'll try to
Mhm.
present the information and say, how can we work together on this? Because
Mhm.
I don't want it to become something that it shouldn't be. So another piece in kind of reflecting to talk with you was trying to discover what are some of those pain points, right? And my approach, and this is hard for people who maybe whose minds don't work the same way. I think our minds and how we approach things and how we interact and receive information and address that information is so different from person to person. And so for me, I don't necessarily dwell on the challenges. I try to approach a challenge. You understand something's happening, you need to address it right away. Address it and then learn from it and move forward. And so I know from even girlfriends of mine, friends of mine that are like, oh, I kept replaying it in my head. I knew that there was something I should have done different, or I should have done this. I'm a very much, okay, this is what happened. This was the most information that we had at the time. This is what we need to move forward. Let's do it. And then you kind of test. Not every decision is right, but you make the best decision you can. So in thinking about what maybe is a recent or a friction point, it's hard for me to pinpoint something specifically off the top of my head, but I can tell you traditionally what happens is there's either someone from my team, there's something that happens, and I try to analyze the information from both sides, almost as a mediator in a way. And I don't ever want to get too caught up in one side, because there's what's that old saying, there's your side, my side, and then the truth somewhere in the middle. And so I recognize that, right? Like someone's perception, how they feel is important, and you want to value that. But it doesn't mean that the other person was trying to be malicious either, right? Just because it was received that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll tell you, leadership is not for the faint of heart. It is, leading people is probably the hardest but best job that you'll ever have, right? Regardless of the industry you're in, regardless of what it is that you do, if you are responsible for people and you take that seriously, it is one of the hardest jobs. It's not just to say, oh yeah, I manage people. It is it's something that stays with you. You become responsible for these people and their livelihood and their jobs and their success and their growth and we spend a third of our lives with the people that we interact with. And so why would we not try to make it an enjoyable, memorable growth opportunity every day? And so that's honestly, I tried. My husband laughs at me because I work from home. And so he hears me on video calls all day long. Like I'm always on meetings, and he hears how much fun I'm having. And he's like, you were on calls all day talking to your friends. I'm like, hey, listen, just because we're getting work done, but we can be positive about it, and I can have positive interactions with our clients and with our teams, and I can have fun and I can care about them, does not mean that work's not getting done. Every day work's getting done, but because I have a smile on my face and I can crack a joke doesn't mean that work's not getting done. So,
yeah. What a great way of approaching it. I love that.
thanks.
Yeah. You talked about collaboration as a leadership style. For your team, how do you know when to be collaborative and when to be a little more directive?
I think the urgency indicates that.
Okay.
So I would look at the urgency of a decision that needs to be made. And if someone or something is pressing, there's a tight deadline, there's something going on and you need a decision made, maybe there's not time to talk with everybody. If you have a kind of your trust tree, your trust circle, if you will, some varying opinions that are not just going to directly align with whatever you say, but will give you different perspectives, run it by them if you can. Otherwise, you're in your position for a reason, right? You know what you know, and you have the responsibilities that you have, and you need to trust that. And so it's not always easy, but the decisions that I make, I rely a lot on where I've come, what I've gone through, what I know as an individual, as a person, and then you make the best decision that you have, and you have to live with that as well, right? It's a level of responsibility that is not always easy to digest, because you have to make the decision with the best information and feel like you validated yourself and that you're willing to stand on that decision. And so that's where sometimes I think you get that kind of analysis paralysis, and you find people can't make direct decisions, is because they worry too much about the outcome. But if you know that you're coming from the right place, you're making the decision with the best information you have. That's all you can do sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know you develop your people a lot so that they have those strengths that they can share and add to the collaboration. How much do you invest in your own development?
Probably not enough. I mean, it's to be fair, there's so much time in a day. So, I mean, I like to do little art projects. I like to enjoy and spend time with my family. I have two younger-ish children, and I get some different, because you're so stimulated, and being on kind of video cameras and meetings and interacting with people throughout the day. Sometimes you don't want to sit at the computer anymore, right? And the computer is such a wealth of knowledge. Like, you can get so much from it, but at the same time, there's a good time to say, I'm okay. I'm okay with the computer today. I'm gonna need to call it quit and go and get some FaceTime, or enjoy a meal with some friends or family. The development that I try to continue to do all the time would be, like I said, not dwelling, but learning from situations that maybe could have gone better different. And I think owning it, if you recognize that maybe you could have done something different, saying, hey, I didn't show up as my best self right there, but it was the honest reaction to what you hit me with. And maybe I should have said, I need to step away and think about this for a minute. Or you just have to kind of trust that who you're working with, and if you are truly trying to do the right thing, that people will have seen that and know that from you. And so you can kind of move forward and move on and continue. I think everybody wants to do a good job, right? I don't think anybody's coming to work to try to be mean or to put people down. I'm sure there's people like that, but I don't think that's who they want to be. Maybe they're just not happy. Which something that I was kind of talking about and thinking about with you was to know who you are and know where you're strong and know where you feel successful at the end of the day. There's often things that like, oh, Erin, you're super good at this. You should do it. But maybe it doesn't fill my bucket. Maybe it doesn't fill my heart. I might be good at it, but it doesn't mean that that's where I feel successful at the end of the day. So reflecting on not that external validation of what maybe you should be doing or should be good at, but what you feel good about doing. And then aligning your career with where that will take you, with what that looks like, with where you can go. I was in a position that I was struggling a little bit with because I felt like I wasn't being successful, and I was trying to figure out how I could get there, how I could do what was being asked of me. And a quote that kind of I came across when I was in that position that really helped me reflect on things and if I was in the right position or maybe not, was that everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, I'm reading it because I had to write it down, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And so when I started questioning my value and what I could do, it made me wonder, am I just not in the right position? Am I just not at the right place at the right time to do what needs to be done here to really impact change? And that's okay. It took a while to get there, but I was feeling like I couldn't do what I was being asked to do. And I was starting to question myself, which I think is natural, right? You're like, why? I know I can do this. Why am I not being successful here? And I think it's a number of factors that can impact you and cause that. And so then it's a little bit bigger of a conversation that is this the right place and right time for me and what I can do and provide to this organization. And sometimes there's a disconnect there and sometimes there's not.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, you've made so many interesting points there that I can hook into. Like, if I think of aspects of your job or your role that you are really successful at, and people see that and they're like, wow, you did a really good job there.
Yes.
Well, there are tasks that if I have short bursts of energy for, I can do a really good job at that. But if you turn that into my full-time job all day, every day,
right.
No, I'm not going to be successful.
That's such a great point.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is they see things, or you might be successful at something, and that's who you were, but it's not necessarily where you want to be going in the future. So,
right.
Yeah, I always encourage people to own their career and you decide which direction you want to go. And you keyed in on that beautifully when you talked about supporting your team and asking them, like, what area do you want to develop in? So it's great that you highlighted that. Because I think leaders forget that sometimes, that it's really important to be a guide, but let other people steer their own ship, to use your analogy. Yeah. That's awesome. What else? Where do you go as sort of sources for inspiration or creativity for your own development and for your own success?
I think everybody scrolls too much, but I will say that there's some different kind of social media avenues on Instagram and stuff, just kind of seeing where there's maybe inspirational people that you follow that have good quotes, or LinkedIn has gotten a little bit more and geared a little bit more, I think, recently towards that, where you can see, that's part of the blessing and the curse of the internet and us all having our phones and being on it all the time, is that you have such a wealth of information. From a creativity standpoint, from a just kind of personal balance, I enjoy doing kind of home projects. My husband and I really like working in the garden and trying to make our home a sanctuary, but as much as we like to be on the road. So we also have a travel trailer that we like to take on the road and go with our girls and explore and let them experience new things. And I think that's where some of it is good balance, is finding what are those things that fill your cup in the other way, right? What are those? I can pour a whole bunch into work, but I need to make sure that I'm balancing that with my family. And I think work-life balance is so hard to attain these days, especially when we work from home. And so I am, and I'm not great at this, because I don't like workaholic, but I do a lot of work, and I, in a lot of ways, get a lot of value out of that, because I align, right, wrong, or indifferent. I have aligned growing up, from my mom, single mom. It was very much you were independent, and you kind of grew, and you did what you needed to do to get to achieve what you were trying to achieve. And so for me, I have put a lot of the who I am as a person, I have aligned with what I'm doing in my job and how I feel, and if I'm supporting people, and if I'm doing a good job. And so while that might not be, from a mental health perspective, the best thing to do, because I align those two things together, it kind of is what it is, right? It is part of who I am. And so all I can do is continue to be cognizant and aware of, where do I need to make sure that I have other outlets and other value statements, and make sure that I'm supporting my kids in the same way I'm trying to support my team, and in different ways. And it's a balance. And I think it's hard to not only prove that you should be where you are, but so much of it is in ourselves, right? So much of it is me pushing myself to say, did I do enough today? And sometimes, like, your boss could be like, you did more than enough. What are you talking about? And you're like, oh, but my to-do list still has so much on it. And so I think it's an interesting thought to try to say, where do you get your creative outlet? Where do you get these different things? Because I feel like if we're not conscious about it, it's so easy to just get in the monotony of the day to day. My stepson was actually asking us last night. He's like, you guys, talking to Pat and I, my husband, he's like, you guys are in your 40s. Are you like done? Like, are you just bored with life? And I was like, no, bored with life. How dare you, sir? And I think that there's this perception when you're younger. It's like you get to a certain point and it's just like, well, you did what you did when you were younger and now you're done. And it's like, no, we're not done. Find what fills us up. Find what makes us happy. Find what can continue to keep that spark alive, not just for work, but for who you are as a person. I think there's a lot of perception that who you should be, what you should look like, what you should do, gets in the way of who we are and the value that we can provide. And so I think continuing to explore and grow as a person is just as important as doing a good job and validating yourself in whatever ways you validate yourself.
Yeah.
Went a little off track there, but hopefully I circled it back.
No, it's beautiful. Like, and it really is an individual thing to decide, like, what are you aligned with and how are you living out your values, right? We live out our values in every area of our lives. It's not just at work, it's at home, it's with our friends, it's in extracurricular activities, whatever we are doing. And I think that all of those make us into the whole person we are. And a lot of people are tempted to very much separate those things, but I think you can derive a lot of inspiration from the other areas of your life. So, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I love
Much
that.
more concise. Well done, Carrie. Thank you. We'll just cut what I have and just put that part in there.
That was just like the little cherry on top. That's all. You said the beautiful stuff. So yeah, and I think it's okay to own that you love working. And I don't know about you, when I turned 40, I felt like I'm just getting started.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. That's why I was floored when he asked that last time. He's 24, so he's still very young. He's just starting his career. He just graduated from college, and so he's like seeing different generations at his job. And he's like, oh, they say that they're bored. They're like 40s and 50s, and that's like they don't have a lot of stuff that they look forward to. And I was like, that's on them. That's not going to be you. Don't worry about it.
You know what I think is really interesting is those first few years after you graduate university, you don't have that newness. New school year brings like new challenges.
It's so true.
And so there is sort of a feeling of endlessness when you first start your career and you're maybe a few years in.
That is such
You,
a good point. You
yeah,
have
I
this
think,
like first day of school excitement,
yeah,
new grade, new teacher, new challenges. And as you get older, you have to kind of create those for yourself on your own.
bingo. There you go. Yeah, creating those on your own is so valuable. So we have to be internally motivated to do that, and it then continues to motivate us and keep that cycle
Right.
going.
I
Yeah.
love that. It is a
Yeah.
cycle.
Yeah, definitely. So here's a question, Erin. What advice would you give to your younger self taking on your first leadership role?
I think the being true to who you are, because I took on, it wasn't a true leadership role, but it was a promotion when I was younger in my career, and there was a lot of perception and even some guidance that was provided to me that what I probably should not have listened to. And that's always an opportunity too, that you get some feedback that you think you need to listen to and it's not great. It was inauthentic to me. So I had a promotion and was within the same team. So, everybody kind of, you have this perception, everybody sees you a certain way, and now you have a promotion. And so I was advised, oh, you can't keep hanging out with them the same way. You can't, you have to kind of separate yourself. And that was inauthentic to me. And it came across, and I lost friends from it because I was trying to be this new perception of this person, but that wasn't what got me the promotion to begin with, was being standoffish or being, separate from my team. And so it was a lesson that I learned, that truly being who you are, not getting caught up in what you should be. I think that there are vantage points that you should try to emulate if it makes sense and if it's still true to you.
Mm-hmm.
But having something that's a disconnect at your core that just doesn't feel right, I don't think it would lead you to the success that you're trying to accomplish. Maybe short term, but I don't know about long term. And for me, it didn't work out. So it was a quick learning experience that was not where I was going to be successful and how I was going to want to continue to grow my career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't sustain that, right? Being someone,
Definitely not.
yeah, being someone you're not. Okay, well, that's great advice. And I'm sure you did learn kind of the hard way.
The hard way. That's
That's what
okay.
other people can benefit from and hopefully not
That's
make
right.
that mistake themselves. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close it off?
No, I really appreciate the time, and I'm open to conversations with anybody else that's watching or wants to just kind of brainstorm. I always love learning from other people as well. So thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you and to share a little bit about me.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. And I know it'll be a pleasure for our listeners as well. And we will put your contact info in the show notes. So
Perfect.
thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you.
We're glad you joined us for Suits and Sneakers. If you want to be an expert guest, look for the link in the show notes. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to be notified of future episodes.